The moment Henry turned around and saw the stranger riding into his ranch, dust swirling around her boots and a pistol on her hip, he froze. That wasn't the meek, plain girl he was told to expect. This woman had fire in her eyes and secrets stitched into her coat. And when she called herself Charlie, claiming to be his new ranch hand, Henry had no idea she was the very bride he'd scoffed at in private letters. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Henry McAllister didn't believe in love. Not after the war, not after losing his family, and definitely not in the middle of Texas cattle country where land, not hearts, was what men fought for. At 35, the only thing Henry loved was control. His ranch was his kingdom, his legacy, and no woman, especially not one arranged through dusty letters and distant promises, would change that. But pressure came in from all sides. Rival ranchers were circling like vultures. The bank was tightening its grip, and his dying uncle's will made one thing clear: marry within 6 months or lose the deed to McAllister Acres. With resentment in his chest and a cigar between his teeth, Henry agreed to the arrangement. The girl's father, a wealthy but eccentric New York trader, offered his only daughter in exchange for a Western alliance. "She ain't pretty," the man had warned, "but she's obedient." That suited Henry just fine. He didn't need pretty. He needed quiet. But while Henry scoffed, 300 miles away in Kansas, Charlotte Whitmore read every letter exchanged about her like she was a cow being bartered. She wasn't ugly, but she was furious. Furious that her father would use her like property. Furious that Henry didn't even bother to write her himself. So she did something no one expected. She cut her hair, packed her saddlebag, and took off under a new name. When she arrived at McAllister Acres, it wasn't as a bride. It was as a hired hand. Dirty boots, hat low, voice gruff. She called herself Charlie and swore she could herd cattle better than any man. Henry, unimpressed but desperate, hired her without a second glance. Neither of them had any idea what was coming. Not the betrayal, not the fire, and definitely not the feelings. The first few days, Charlie earned nothing but contempt from Henry. She was fast, sure, clever even, but something about her rubbed him raw. Maybe it was the way she questioned orders, or the fact she could rope calves quicker than some of his seasoned hands. Henry prided himself on discipline and predictability. Charlie was chaos wrapped in denim. But Charlie had a plan. She wasn't just there to teach Henry a lesson. She wanted to see what kind of man he truly was when no one was watching. So she listened in on saloon gossip, learned the ranch's inner workings, and stayed up late fixing fences no one asked her to. She even helped his younger sister Sadie, the only kind-hearted soul on the ranch, with her injured mare. Still, it wasn't easy. The other ranch hands whispered about her voice, her strange manners. One even tried to corner her in the barn, drunk and sneering. Henry intervened just in time, not out of chivalry, he claimed, but to keep order. But something shifted in Henry after that. He started noticing the little things. How Charlie always took the night watch without complaint. How she tended to the land with care, not just brute force. How her eyes, dark, defiant, intelligent, seemed oddly familiar. One evening, after a cattle rustling scare, Henry and Charlie rode back in silence. The moonlight washed the prairie silver, and as they reached the ridge, she finally asked, "You ever wonder if the life you built is just a cage with a fancier lock?" He didn't answer, but her words cut deeper than any insult ever had. Because lately, Henry had started to wonder. And Charlie? She wasn't sure if this was still revenge or something far more dangerous. The truth didn't come out gently. It exploded. It happened during the spring festival in town. Henry was invited, reluctantly, and Charlie tagged along after Sadie insisted. Dressed in borrowed trousers and vest, she blended in, until she didn't. A snide banker, One of Henry's rivals laughed too hard at a passing comment about arranged marriages.
Heard your bride's arriving next week. Poor girl. Must be uglier than a dry well if she's being shipped like cattle.
Charlie froze. Sadie choked on her cider. Henry's face turned to stone. Then, without thinking, Charlie stepped forward and snapped, "She's braver than you'll ever be. And smarter, too." The silence was deafening.
"Funny,"
the banker sneered.
"You sound like you know her."
Charlie's heart pounded. The moment had arrived. She stepped into the lamplight, yanked off her hat, and let the stunned crowd see her for who she truly was. Charlotte Whitmore, the arranged bride. The man she was supposed to marry stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. "You lied to me," Henry said, low and sharp. "I tested you," she shot back, "and you failed." The crowd dispersed in whispers. Sadie tried to mediate, but Charlotte turned, walked out of town, and left Henry standing under the wide Texas sky with nothing but his pride and his regret. For weeks, Charlotte didn't return to the ranch. She found lodging with a local widow and worked the stables. Word spread quickly, the bride who fooled the cattle baron. Some called her bold, others called her reckless, but she didn't care. Until the night the wildfire came. Lightning struck dry brush west of McAllister Acres, and flames spread fast. The wind pushed toward the barn, and Sadie was trapped inside, caught trying to save the horses. Charlotte didn't hesitate. She rode like the devil himself was behind her. Henry was already there, coughing through smoke, trying to pry the barn doors open. When he saw her gallop in, fear and relief warred in his eyes. But they had no time for words. They saved Sadie together. The ranch survived, barely. But something else changed in the fire. In the ashes, Henry found Charlotte tending to a wounded colt, her face streaked with soot, hair loose around her shoulders. He knelt beside her, voice hoarse. "I was wrong." She didn't look at him. "I judged you before I knew your name, before I even wanted to know." She met his eyes. "You saw me as a burden, not a partner." "I don't anymore." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken forgiveness, longing, and finally, respect. Charlotte whispered, "So now what?" Henry reached for her hand, rough against rough. "Now we start again. But this time, no disguises." She smiled. "Good. Because this time, I'm not hiding." They kissed in the ruins of the barn, surrounded by smoke and stars. And just like that, a marriage that began in hatred found its roots in love.